I didn't know he was going to pull the trigger. I didn't know when the picture was taken.
Life magazine and Le Monde have declared it one of the most influential images of the 20th century.
Sometimes we go on photographic shoots. We try to savor every second as if our lives depended on it. We desire to hang on to precious memories dearly, like priceless treasures. Yet, photographs can be dream-shattering and dangerous. Today, we journey into the dark sides of photography. We consider 13 photos that didn't just represent a moment, but changed lives forever. If you asked the people involved to make just one wish, they would tell you they wish they could rewind time. Some of these are iconic, and some are disastrous, yet each one has a story to tell. The last would shock you. 13. A political misstep. The name Anthony Weiner is an object lesson for anyone in public office. In the early 2010s, Weiner was a popular congressman from New York. His career was on the ascendance. He could be seen making powerful speeches, raising large audiences to their feet with cheers and roaring laughter. Some people were even looking in his direction as a potential candidate for the exalted office of the presidency. No one saw what was coming. Suddenly, Weiner's world began to crash. One bad judgment ruined everything. On that fateful day, Weiner sent an explicit picture to a lady. This was no normal selfie. He was scantily dressed, and it was as if his genitals were on display. He thought he had sent it discreetly. Later, he discovered his mistake and deleted it. But unfortunately for him, it was already on Twitter. Conservative blogger Andrew Breitbart had gotten a good screenshot and uploaded it online.
His confession came after conservative blogger Andrew Breitbart posted this and other photos on his site.
Major media houses ran with the story. TMZ started digging up more implicating images. In an instant, Weiner's political career evaporated faster than water on a hot summer day. That was it. Gone with the wind. No second chance. Soon enough, he was forced off Congress, following the massive public backlash. His great political stature was dwarfed 1,000 times by the towering wave of backlash. From there, things only grew worse. He was convicted of sending inappropriate messages to a teenager. No one wanted anything to do with him. Imagine you were in Weiner's shoes. Not only was he humiliated, his allies stayed as far away from him as possible to avoid being stained. Weiner's story tells us what happens when you act without thinking. But the next one would leave you wondering how long the effects of one mistake can last. 12. Heroes with hidden struggles. This picture has been in many book covers and made it into many documentaries as an epitome of heroism and resilience. Have you ever wondered about the men behind this iconic photo? What if we can peep into what their lives were before, during, and after this heroic moment? 6 members of the brave Marines were in this event, but 3 of them were to later pay the ultimate price. To the nation, they were celebrated heroes.
But now amateur historians say John Bradley was not among those 6 men cast in bronze.
But what became of them after the war is a different story. After this heroic event, life took a sharp turn down an unfamiliar road. The ghosts of the horrors they witnessed became their constant companions. Ira Hayes, one of the 3 Marines, suddenly came into the spotlight. He was constantly harassed for autographs and stories. Many would expect him to enjoy the attention, but deep down, he longed for the peace of a monastery in the Himalayas. The unexpected result of fame and the weight of the war took a toll on Hayes. He faced another type of battle. This time he had to battle his demons and slipped into alcoholism and depression. Did he ever find the support and help he needed? Anywhere he went, people would swarm around him like bees around honeycomb, looking for stories and autographs from one of their heroes? Could the adulation and attention have been too much to handle? It's clear that Hayes wanted a quiet life, away from the prying eyes of the public. His fame and the trauma of his wartime experiences made that difficult to achieve. Still, he struggled, yet attention increased. If only he had the help he needed. His symptoms are often linked to post-traumatic stress disorder and the inability to cope with trauma. He was deeply affected by the war and the fame that came with it. Therefore, he looked for inspiration in alcohol. But society failed to pay attention. The man they worshipped was dying within. He sought for the peace of a monastery in the Himalayas. Hayes often isolated himself, preferring to be alone instead of the constant attention and demands placed upon him. He craved normalcy and a life away from the public eye. He rarely spoke about his experiences in Iwo Jima. Rather, he desired to distance himself from the traumatic events and the fame associated with them. Now, let's move on to a case that may leave you utterly shocked. 11. A comedian's downfall. Kathy Griffin, the comedian, found out that crossing some boundaries is like stepping into a minefield. Make just one wrong move and everything explodes. Dust to dust, ashes to ashes. In 2017, Kathy Griffin posed with a fake severed head resembling then-President Donald Trump.
Kathy Griffin is back on the offensive after posting a shocking video of President Trump.
She wanted to make a provocative statement, but she got more than she bargained for. Her jokes turned on her and came back as tears, like rainfall on a cloudy day. The image sparked a massive uprising. She had paid the piper and had to dance to the tunes. But rather than dance, she tried to apologize. "I beg for your forgiveness. I went too far. I made a mistake, and I was wrong," Griffin said. But that was the final nail in the coffin. She lost multiple opportunities, was dismissed from her New Year's Eve hosting role at CNN, and found herself effectively blacklisted within the entertainment industry. Everyone kept her at arm's length, as if she had been plagued. Even her closest friends wouldn't touch her with a pole. In a bid to change the narrative, she rescinded her apology, claiming to be a target of political persecution. But no one was buying her claims. Her career was going down the drain. She could only perform in obscure venues like Beirut, far from the spotlight she once enjoyed. 10. The cost of a selfie. A single photograph can do more than damage a reputation. It can be a ticking time bomb. This was the case for Sarah Iden, Miss Iraq, 2017. During the Miss Universe pageant, she took an innocent selfie with Miss Israel. She shared the image with a caption advocating for peace and love.
Posted for this selfie with Miss Israel, Adar Gandelsman. Both of them shared that photo on their Instagram.
But her message was not taken in good faith. The picture provoked the Arab world, who already had strange relationships with Israel. She found herself in the middle of an uprising. Her own people were fighting with her. Her people accused her of betraying their homeland simply because of her beauty and influence. To them, she had sold her birthright on the altars of an award. She had abandoned the Palestinian cause. The backlash grew like wildfire. Her family members back home began to get death threats. They had to seek asylum. Under immense pressure from the government, she had to delete the photo and tender a public apology. "Hello and welcome. I'm Sarah Iden, Miss Iraq 2017, she said. But she remained committed to her message of peace. Consequently, she was dethroned as the reigning Miss Iraq. She even found it difficult to renew her Iraqi ID. She was stranded in a foreign land. But what happens when individuals exploit tragedies for profit? 9. The price of tragedy. This image has become a monumental emblem of the tragedy that struck Oklahoma City in 1995. It brings back memories of loss, Have you ever wondered about the man who took this picture? Who was he? And how did the events of that fateful day alter his life? When Lester Laro woke up on that fateful day, little did he know what it held in store. The events of that day would change his life from an ordinary gas company worker to an overnight celebrity. He happened to be in the bombing area and rushed to the scene to help. With his camera handy, he recorded the event. He captured this image that would become a reminder of the tragedy. The photo gained national attention and was published in Newsweek. But something else was to follow. As his fame grew, so also did the controversy about the image. His employer claimed ownership of the photo because it was captured using company equipment. Laro begged to differ and fought for the rights to his image. The following legal battle dragged on for years. The battle affected his life as he faced financial difficulties and emotional distress. The heroic actions had a lasting impact that would shape the rest of his life. He did not receive compensation for his work. Some individuals in this story deal with their hidden struggles, much like the next person we'll discuss. 8. A comedy tragedy. Al Franken's catastrophic downfall was unbelievable. In late 2017, he was a casualty of the waves of sexual misconduct accusations spreading through Hollywood and Washington, D.C. The former comedian turned U.S. Senator had long been vocal in support of women's rights. He emphasized how women's claims against powerful men often went disregarded. Suddenly, his own allegations stared him in the face. Broadcaster Leanne Tweeden came forward with sexual assault allegations against him. Then came the evidence. A photo that would seal Franken's fate in politics.
You know, I take a lot of pictures in Minnesota, thousands of pictures, meet tens of thousands of people.
Taken during a tour in the mid-2000s, the image depicted Franken smiling while grabbing Tweeden's breast as she slept. All I can remember is that his lips were really wet and it was slimy, Tweeden stated. Serious as the allegations were, the damning photograph proved to be his undoing. Despite his desperate attempts to dismiss it as a joke,
won't let me write jokes for her. She was asked to.
The damage was already done. As more women shared similar tales of harassment, each one more and more obscene, his doom had been sealed. Franken's political career came to an abrupt end. He was confronted with the decision either to resign from the Senate or be forced out. He chose to resign.
That in the coming weeks, I will be resigning as a member of the United States Senate,
leaving his once promising future in pieces. After he resigned, the issue of sexual harassment sparked widespread discussions on public accountability, power dynamics, and mutual consent in relationships. The Me Too movement gained momentum, and numerous individuals were emboldened to come forward and reveal their stories of harassment and assault. Many were advised to go for counseling and therapy to help them heal from the trauma. Franken's case brought contemporary issues related to sexual assault in public office and private organizations to the limelight. Interestingly, the reactions to this issue were different. Some saw Franken's departure as a necessary step to purge the system and hold powerful individuals accountable. Others argued he was being unfairly treated and targeted by conservatives. AI Franken expressed regret over his resignation. He stated how he felt pressured to step down without the opportunity to fully address the accusations against him. As far as misinterpretations go, this next example shows how misunderstanding human behavior, combined with the power of media, work together to shape the narratives. It is crucial to approach such situations with both sensitivity and a critical eye. 7. A wrongful accusation.
All of the effort that you made and all of the people whose names I haven't mentioned
This photograph takes us back to June 1968, a summer that went down in history as a season of tragedy. That month saw the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. "So I thank all of you who made this possible this evening," Kennedy had said. Who would have known his death was around the corner? One image from that night remains unforgettable. In the picture, President Kennedy was lying on the floor with his head in the hands of an unknown bystander. While President Kennedy was a popular figure, few knew the young man holding him. He was Juan Romero, a 17-year-old busboy from Mexico. He was working in a nearby hotel where the incident happened. When the senator was shot, Romero was holding his hand. One moment, he was shaking hands with his hero. The next, he found himself holding his lifeless head. The picture captured the harrowing incident, spreading across newspapers and television screens worldwide. However, whispers came from some quarters accusing Romero of being responsible for the president's death.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 a.m., June 6, 1968.
They claimed the president died because he had paused to greet him. Some even suggested he should have taken the bullet on behalf of the president. These words weighed heavily on Romero. We were totally unprepared for the attention the incident brought to him. He was a struggling young man from a humble background, fortunate enough to meet his hero and exchange handshakes. All he asked was his normal, quiet life back. It was impossible. Guilt and constant scrutiny loomed large. It pursued him frequently, and he had to change residence. Although he settled down and raised a family, he never really healed from the emotional scars from that night. Romero dreamed of attending college, but that dream seemed ever so distant after that fateful day. The guilt and unwanted fame were like shadows that followed him throughout his life. This story serves as a note of caution that it is not everyone who is famous that wants to be, especially when it comes at a heavy personal price. 6. The medal stand protest. If you're familiar with the Olympics, you've most likely seen this photo before. An image of 3 athletes on a podium, each with a medal hanging around his neck. There is a lot more to this image than what we see. There is a background story to this that many people don't know. It is a picture of a decisive moment in history, of courage, and of solidarity. The Olympic Games in Mexico City in the summer of 1968 stood the world on its head. Peter Norman was an Australian sprinter with a heart to match his talent. Among the competitors, he won the silver in the 200-meter race, but what he did on the podium would make him a symbol of defiance. Well before the medal ceremony, 2 American athletes, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, went to Norman with a plan. They wanted to stage a protest on racial inequality within the United States, and they wanted to do it on a global stage. This was their chance. Norman was asked if he would wear a human rights badge on his uniform in solidarity. Norman, who has experienced firsthand the injustices against black athletes, was very willing. He even suggested they wear black gloves in protest of black power. The 3 athletes then stood on the podium on the day of the medal ceremony, but their silent protest proved far louder than words would have. Their protest was very effective. They were furious. The International Olympic Committee, his own country, ostracized him, and when they lost, his career was ruined. Australia didn't qualify any sprinters for the 200 meters at the 1972 Olympics, and he was banned from future Olympic trials. While Norman didn't consider the massive personal cost, his courage and his solidarity with Smith and Carlos will not be forgotten. The protest brought the issue of racial injustice to the public light, and athletes were urged to take a stand against that kind of thing. Their image is now a strong symbol of resistance and hope today. True heroism. Many times it means one must take a stand. It is important for us to fight in order to have a just and equitable world. Next, let's look at one woman who used to work for the military, but a photo destroyed their career. 5. The misunderstood officer. Dick Middleton used to work for the military, but she does not anymore because she took this photo and it ruined her career. She made a big mistake by taking a selfie and posing with the unconscious body of an enemy while she was laughing. It was obviously deemed to be in extraordinarily bad taste. Because of this action, she was removed from the military immediately. Imagine striving to do what you believe is right, only to be labeled an international villain. This was the fate that befell Dick Middleton, a police officer in America during the civil rights movement. You may have seen the popular photo of Middleton, a white cop, seemingly allowing his dog to attack a young black protester. The image became a powerful symbol of racial violence, and it was even immortalized in a statue in Birmingham. However, the story behind that photo is not as simple as it looks on the surface. Malcolm Gladwell, in his podcast Revisionist History, goes over the narrative of Middleton, a pivotal figure in the civil rights era. According to Gladwell, that fateful event involving Middleton was not as it seemed. On that fateful day, a young protester, Walter Gaydon, accidentally bumped into Middleton. This prompted the officer's dog to lunge at Gaydon. In the heat of the moment, Middleton tried to push Gaydon away. A confusing camera capture created a misleading narrative. This is what many people misinterpreted. They assumed the worst about Middleton's actions. The fallout from that photograph haunted Middleton threats and hate mail. It had an immense emotional impact on him and his family. Although he retained his job, the experience had a lasting impact. This unfortunate series of events is very opposite compared to the next story, where individuals actively bring trouble upon themselves. 4. The photo that changed the Vietnam War. We next go on an unusual journey down the dark corridors of history. Even though General Nguyen Ngoc Loan was not that much popular, his deeds are recorded in history. Picture this: in the chaos of the Vietnam War, particularly the Tet Offensive, where the air was thick with tension and the ground was soaked with the blood of countless lives. Against this background, a moment was captured for eternity. A photo was taken, and that photograph would live long in the memory of the whole world. There, Loan, in an action of brutality, executes a Viet Cong fighter in cold blood. This snapshot can be called a silent scream against the backdrop of war. It branded Loan with ruthless violence. It painted a picture of him as the face of a merciless era. But then the plot gets more disturbing. There is a twist in the tale that most historians don't tell. That Viet Cong fighter, whose life ended in the click of the gun, had just torn apart the family of one of Loan's dearest friends. This made him very angry and seek vengeance rather than just cold military calculation. That's the part of the story that most people don't know. The photograph spoke a narrative of icy execution, but underneath its surface was revenge. This haunting image didn't just capture a moment, it stayed with him and followed him everywhere he went, just like a shadow. Later, as fate will have it, he fled to the United States, seeking refuge. But the immigration officers recognized him from the photo. They attempted to send him back into the storm he had just escaped. But fate, in its mysterious ways, had Eddie Adams step in to rescue him. His intervention unlocked Loan's new chapter in America. Yet, even with a new beginning, the scars of that event were too deep. Loan tried to carve out a new life, opening a restaurant in the heart of Washington, D.C. But the past has a way of catching up. When that photo resurfaced, he was forced to close his restaurant. Even today, the echo of that moment cannot make people to dine in peace in his restaurant. Eddie Adams, the man behind the lens, thought and reflected heavily on the weight of his work. He spoke of how, in that single, defining moment, 2 lives were destroyed. The Viet Cong fighter's journey ended then and there. In that same way, General Lone's career also ended. Both men were victims of a war captured in black and white. As you will see in the following story, sometimes being labeled the bad guy doesn't always come from having bad intentions. You can have good intentions and still be misunderstood. 3. A life altered by tragedy. George Holliday. For an ordinary man, living an ordinary life one day in 1991 will turn his life around. This is the story of George Holliday. One day, out of curiosity, he picked up his camera and took a picture. Little did he know how far-reaching the effects of that photo would be. Now, imagine this. You've seen something that is not supposed to be. You witness the raw, ugly side of power, and you decide to do something about it. You decide to speak the truth and show clear evidence of brutality. Yet, this storm will now bring a spark that will set the nation ablaze with anger and make them demand justice. That short clip, capturing the brutal beating of Rodney King by Los Angeles police, did not just stir the pot, it broke it into pieces. It laid bare the racial injustices that America was trying to ignore. It ignited a fire so that the nation could confront the truth. Why would a man who simply wanted to expose the truth, then they will now give him injustice? Was it because of his race, or his social status, or because he did not have money, or because he wanted to challenge the system? The verdict that followed the trial was a slap in the face of justice. Even though he presented correct evidence, the accused police officers were set free from all charges against them. George Holliday later died in 2021 after complications due to COVID. What if you were in George Holliday's shoes? Would you have had the courage to speak out, even if it meant risking your life? Yet, as we will see in the next story, not all public mistakes carry such severe punishment. 2. The Bacon Sandwich Incident. Ed Miliband served as the leader of the Labour Party in Britain from 2010 to 2015. He was seen as the key challenger to Prime Minister David Cameron, based on opinion polls.
Improve frontline policing, but the West Midlands is losing 1,000 officers. Bedfordshire has scaled back.
This was going on until the Bacon Sandwich Incident put the brakes on his runaway train of momentum. The incident began on a typical London day, with Ed Miliband looking for a short time to rest and eat something. A bug snapped him as he took a big bite on his bacon sandwich. Then all of a sudden, pictures started to appear on the internet about the way he was eating. They started to condemn him, that he was eating like a glutton, that this type of manners was unbecoming of a future prime minister. As the ballots got closer, that picture continued to resurface, and it continued to hunt him. The tabloids, especially The Sun, showed that embarrassing moment across their covers right before the national vote. Miliband's policy proposals will brush their side because the backlash from that picture of him was too much to discard. The unbelievable nature of this situation was one of the pivotal moments in his electoral downfall. This wasn't just a stumble, it was a colossal defeat, reshaping British political life. Yet this incident tells us how politics can find its way into every angle of our existence, whether it is in sports or in private life. 1. Ophelia's tragic tale. Picture this. You're back to the days of Victorian England, where the very air you breathe is smoke. Life moves very slowly, and the weight of society's expectations rests upon your shoulders. In this fog-laden background, the painter John Everett Millais brings up a wonderful piece of art that comes out impeccably beautiful. He paints Ophelia, the tragic beauty from Shakespeare, lying adrift in a river. It is almost a picture of divine serenity. She's a symphony of sorrow in the midst of a blooming bouquet of nature's most colorful flowers. This creates a scene that's as haunting as it is beautiful. Now, the muse behind this beautiful picture wasn't your run-of-the-mill lady. Elizabeth Sidle, she was called. She was a woman who knew the hard knocks of life without the silver spoon of wealth or the spotlight of fame. She worked hard making hats, her fingers dancing over fabric, all while society turned a blind eye to her existence, leaving her to fend for herself in obscurity. But as the saying goes, the stars have their own plans. With locks like the flames of a sunset and skin as pale as the moon, Elizabeth turned the heads of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. These artists, with their hearts set on painting with painstaking detail, found in her the fulfillment of their wildest dreams. She wasn't just a model, she was the living canvas they'd been searching for. But it will be wrong to say that being a model back in Victorian times was all rosy. Far from it. There were no fancy dressing rooms, just a tight squeeze of a space to get ready. Millet, with his vision set on capturing the soul of Ophelia, had Elizabeth floating in a bathtub. Here's the interesting part. It was winter, and though they tried to keep the water toasty with oil lamps, fate had other plans. Those lamps went off, leaving Elizabeth to shiver in the cold embrace of the water. She caught pneumonia from this, and sadly, her light was extinguished at the tender age of 32. This story is as tragic as the one she portrayed. What if you were in Elizabeth Siddle's shoes? Would you have endured the inconvenience just for the sake of art? Thank you all for joining as we looked through photos that came back to ruin people's lives. If you found this informative, please like, subscribe, and share. Have you ever been photographed in an embarrassing situation? In the comments, let us know. Stay tuned for more stories that reveal hidden truths from around the world.